Welcome to Book Banter with me, your host, Diane Burkhart. I hope you will join me every Wednesday as we explore all things to do with, well, books. Let's get on with our show today. Hello, my happy people. Today is February 5th, 2025, and today we begin Season 4 of Book Banter with Diane Burkhart, your book talk podcast. And just like before, we are starting out with 2 months of Lovefest. We are bringing you books from authors who every story has some sort of side love story. We have traditional romance tropes. We also have thrillers and World War II stories that bring you love stories in a more outside of the normal romance box. But everybody has fantastic books. They have such great stories to tell you, and you're going to love it. But today we're going to kick things off with an award-winning romance author from Nova Scotia. She is absolutely fantastic, and I had such a great time talking with her, and you're going to love hearing it. So without further ado, let's go right to our interview today. Please welcome to Book Banter with Diane Burkhart, our first Lovefest author, Lori Matthews. If you've ever listened to any of our episodes, you know the way we like to start these shows is to have my guests tell our listeners who you are and what you do.
My name is Lori Matthews, and I write romantic suspense novels and a few other things.
So you have quite a nice catalog of books. How many different series do you have going?
That's a good question. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6. I guess 6. You'd think I would know.
That's a nice selection.
Thank you. Yes, you'd think I would know, but it gets away from me sometimes.
I would imagine. So what is the series that you're working on right now?
So currently there's a series, my Locked series, Locked Away. I think it's Locked Out, Locked. Oh, you think I remember those too. Anyway, and that one is the next one up. I've actually sort of stepped away, oddly enough, from romantic suspense briefly to write a dark mafia vampire romance.
Oh.
Yes, which is really off brand for me. So I started under a whole new pen name. But because a group of us were doing it, a group of really great authors who were friends said, hey, let's get together and write something totally different. And so we did. And it's been a lot of fun. But it's also probably not my favorite thing to write. Mm-hmm. I've enjoyed the experience in writing with these women and all of that. But I'm not so good with mafia vampires, I've realized.
Well, do you think challenging yourself with something different every once in a while helps your creativity stay, I don't know, fresh?
Yes, absolutely. And all of my readers who've read the books say they're excellent and really enjoy them and everything. It's just harder for me to get into the mindset of it a bit. Mm-hmm. But you're right. It does sort of refresh the creative side because you kind of get into the zone when I'm doing all of my romantic suspense and I know exactly where I'm at and what I have to do. And not that it gets rote, but you get into your groove faster. Yeah. But sometimes that does mean that you kind of feel a little stale. So this was an opportunity for me to try something new to refresh. Mm-hmm. And I think it really has refreshed. There'll be 3 books in this series. And then actually, oddly enough, 2025 is going to be my year of trying something new again. And I think I'm going to switch to just straight up mystery as well.
Oh, I love mysteries.
Me too. That's what I kept thinking. I love mysteries. Why don't I write one of these? This is I enjoy them so much. I thought this would be great fun. So I'm going to try that this year too. That's my project for the year.
See, and I always think that it's so fun to just try something every once in a while that you would never think of doing normally, just to see what you can do with it.
Exactly. And that was the vampire romance. It's just completely different than what I wrote. So, and it's been a lot of fun. It's just not I realize it's not my forte. Like I have to work really hard at it, mm-hmm. which is not the norm. So it requires more effort, but I have enjoyed it. And every year I try and write, and my friends laugh at me, but I try and write the books I've scheduled for the year. But at the end of the year, I try and write something different every year for myself. And I put those books in a drawer. And then at some point I bring them out like, oh, there's another new series here, or if I need it because something happened in another book, I don't have it scheduled properly, then I have something to slide in. And that's my little treat for the year. So I always try and do that to just sort of perk up my spirit.
That sounds like such a good plan. I'm never that prepared.
Just the little treat for me at the end, I think, just to make sure that, I'm getting to the year and at the end I'm going to write something fun just for me. So it keeps
Now,
me going.
when I was doing my research about you, I found that books have pretty much been a constant in your life from early childhood.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the greatest gifts I think my parents have given me from a young age, and this is back when you could do this sort of thing. We lived outside the city. I'm from Nova Scotia, and we lived outside Halifax. And my parents would have to drive into the city to get groceries. So they would drop us at the local public library. So I spent most Saturdays reading and getting all kinds of books. And then when I was in school, doing all the research and all those things. And then when I graduated, I had a history degree and I decided what did I want to do? Well, I went back and I got my master's in library science because I had spent all those years in the library and reading was such a part of my life. Both of my parents read. My dad was always reading like the Wilbur Smith and all the spy novels and my mom read romance. And so books were just part of my whole existence. We would all sit together, oddly enough, in a room. We'd all be in the living room reading together, but separately, if you know what I mean. It was
Yeah.
something we did as a family. Everybody sat around and read. So I just continued that all the way through into my career.
See, and I love whenever I hear that. That was the one thing too for me that I got from my parents. I remember always seeing my parents reading books, and that was the one thing I could ask for that I never got to know. If I wanted books, they would get them for me.
Always, always. And I actually carried that on with my family too. So for my kids, it's the only thing they're guaranteed always. If they ask for a book, they always get it.
Yeah. Now, you didn't just have this history with your family, though. I mean, you started working in a public library and then you went on to work in a school library. Did you try and pass your love of books on to the students at the school?
Yes. And it was a lot of fun because not only did I have to teach them about research and whatever, because that, fundamentally they were learning how to write their papers and how to support that and keep that aspect going. But they also needed downtime. So I
Hmm.
would have groups of them come in and tell me about what they've heard, what book would be good, or read reviews and tell me, hey, which one would you like? And I used to buy those for the library and then we'd sit around and read them and chat about them. And not in like an organized way, more in a casual way. And it
Hmm.
was a lot of fun. And I think there were times when they just needed some downtime and they'd come in and just hang out with me and we'd talk about books. That's sort of the best one-on-one with them, I
Hmm.
think. And Harry Potter was big. We all read Harry Potter and chatted about it. And even as some of the staff and faculty, we'd all sit there and read Harry Potter together too, and
Yeah.
talk about it. So it was nice. It was a nice way to keep children and older kids, because I work mostly with the high school kids, interested in reading.
Now, I know that you also eventually went on to a corporate job. What did you do for your career after that?
I did. I went into corporate and actually I worked for Penguin, the publishing house,
Oh, wow.
as a corporate librarian for a while. And that was interesting. It was research and you'd had to keep track of all their books and things like that. You'd keep copies of them and stuff. Wasn't really my cup of tea. Corporate's not really my jam, as they say, but
Hmm.
it was interesting and I learned a lot from it. So I've sort of made the stop everywhere. I did public library because I used to work for the New York Public Library, and that was super interesting. Coming right out of library school, NYPL held a job for me, and I went down and I moved to New York with a backpack and a job promise, and that was it. So it was quite the adventure, and I learned a lot from it. And then from public, I went into corporate briefly, and then I went into school. So it took me a while to kind of figure out what I liked about being a librarian and where my interests were. But I got something from every part of all those jobs. It was really a nice, well rounded career, I think, in being a librarian because I hit all the major spots.
How did you finally make that move from working in, library sciences to writing your own books?
I always knew, I think, that I would write. But once I was pregnant and my husband and I lived quite far from New York at the time, and we'd been commuting. Once I had my baby, we decided that it just wasn't worth it to get care and drive back and forth. So I stayed home, which was a whole new experience for me. And I have to say, probably really stressful. Stay-at-home parenting is not for the weak. I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot involved in that one. But after my kids were in school and busy, I just thought, now is my moment. And actually, I'll tell you, do you know Eloisa James? I don't know if you know her. She writes historical romance. Her real name is Mary Blige. She's a Shakespeare professor at Fordham. Currently, I think she's the head of the department. Or anyway, she's huge in the romance world. And she was doing this writing workshop in Tuscany. And I saw online, I got her newsletter, and she said, oh, there's one slot left. And I went and I looked, and I thought, oh, I really want to do this. So I applied, thinking, there's no way. I've never written anything. They're never going to let me in. And I said to my husband, I'm going to apply to this. And he's going, what? It's 10 days in Tuscany. You can't go for 10 days and leave me with the kids. And I'm like, oh, they're never going to let me in. And within an hour, they're like, sure. My husband,
wow.
completely. It was hilarious. So I went, got on a plane, went to Tuscany, never having written, got there. And with all these authors who everybody already had books out and everything else. And it was like being dropped into the deep end. But it was the most amazing thing.
I would imagine.
Mary Blige, Louisa James, she, not only because she's a professor, can she teach, but she was honest and talked about the industry and talked about everything. And then I would sit in my room and write at night, and then the next day she would have critique slots for all of us. And she would critique it and tell me how to make it better and what I should do differently and all these things. It was just an amazing experience. And that really kicked me from, I think I want to write, into, oh, I am so going to do this.
It's amazing. I mean, you would
Truly.
almost think that that's kismet.
Exactly. Honestly, I always swear by that. And I'll tell you, there was another moment. So after that, I wrote a few books and didn't really do anything with them. Submitted them. They're never quite I always got not quite sure how we'd market this, or it's really good, but you'd have to change these 10 things, those types of things from trad. And believe it or not, I was out to dinner with my family. We're sitting in a Chinese food restaurant, and I got a fortune cookie because I had decided, I should preface this, I had decided, you know what, I've written books. I'm okay with it if I don't do anything else. Like, I'm good. I'm tired. The kids, there was so much going on. And I got a fortune cookie that said, you were on the precipice of something big.
Oh.
And I was like, well, now I guess I have to keep going.
Yeah.
And I saved that fortune cookie. I have it, the little piece of paper, because I just thought, you know what? This is, again, it's the universe sent me that email that day, I swear, and I did the thing in Tuscany, and then I'm sitting there and deciding I'm kind of done, and they send me another message, no, you have to keep going. So I've been very, I think, lucky, but also I do think sometimes it's kind of fated. I have to keep moving.
So what was the first book that you actually published?
The first book I put out is called Break and Enter. It's my Callahan Security series, and I still love it because obviously it was my first book. So the hero is one of the Callahan brothers, and he does private security. And he is hired to protect the thing that the heroine, a female protagonist, is hired to steal. And so the whole book is a game of cat and mouse between the two of them. And it was just so much fun to write.
I would imagine that sounds like it would just be a fun premise to read too.
Yeah, it was just great. And I enjoyed every minute of it. And that is my best-selling series. And it's got so far 6 books. There's another couple coming out this year. And it launched actually the Locked series as well. So all my books are written in the same world. They all exist together in that same world. So the Locked series is actually an offshoot of Callahan.
Now, does that include the vampire gangster one?
No.
Okay.
The vampire ones actually have a mention or two. If so, there are some Easter eggs. If you read my other books, you'll realize it. So I do have them there. But Shifted, that we're going to talk about, is also, they're Callahan cousins. So it's kind of fun. I always try and make all those connections in my books because I think it's more fun to read that way.
Yeah. It's like that's what I started doing with my Western series was there's
Hmm.
always like a family that their child grows up and goes on into the next story. It's, them. It always like offshoots from somebody.
And I just think for a reader, as a reader, I enjoy that, right?
Oh
Like, don't
yeah.
you? I think the first time it really struck me was the Harry Bosch books when they made the movie with Clint Eastwood and they did all that stuff and he wrote that into his books. And I
Hmm.
thought, oh, that is just the smartest thing to do. Like to create that world and bring and make the character of that world and bring all
Hmm.
that in. And so from then on, I thought I'm definitely doing that.
Well, there's always something very comfortable about having characters that you're familiar with. That's why people love series because they can keep going back to the characters that they love. They get invested.
It's true. And I think it's like putting on your favorite sweater or your favorite slippers or whatever when you
Hmm.
get a chance to sit down and read that and know that you don't have to start from scratch in a sense and build that relationship with the characters again.
Hmm.
It's really nice. I think that makes it just makes it a warmer experience.
Yeah, because you've already got that world envisioned in your head. You're just bringing new characters in, but the world's already there. You don't have to figure it out.
Exactly. Which is it's so much better for me anyway, which is part of why this whole vampire mafia thing was a little bit difficult. I haven't had to world build to that degree.
Yeah.
Vampires are a completely different set, and there's a lot of magic and things that go with that. And it was definitely a challenge.
Yeah, there's a whole new set of rules.
Exactly. Exactly.
So now where does shifted fit in?
Shifted. So my husband did this racing horse, I guess you call it, with Porsche. It's called the Swiss Cup.
Hmm.
Porsche does something called the Swiss Cup, even though you're not allowed to race in Switzerland. And they race Porsche Cup cars, and they do it across Europe in all the sort of major tracks. There's, I think, 6 races a year.
Hmm.
My husband has always been involved in racing. That was my fault too. I got him started. But anyway, so I knew the guys at Porsche, and I thought after doing it for a couple years, there's no way I can not take the knowledge of this and do something with it, right? I'm there at the track. I used to sit literally on the fuel box and write.
Oh,
So
wow.
it became this whole thing. The guys in the garage used to always try and offer me chairs and stuff. I'm like, no, I just need like a piece of floor and a wall to lean on. So they'd bring me a cushion and I would be everywhere in the garage writing. And so I thought, well, it's just silly not to use all the knowledge that I've gained. So I wrote Shifted, and it's the story of a racing family. That same thing, I started the Shifted takes place at Red Bull Ring in Austria because that's where the first race of the series usually starts. And I just wanted to do something that was, very romantic suspensey with like there's a murder mystery, there's all kinds of things going on, and just incorporate a lot of the knowledge that I got from being, around all these racing people for years.
I think my husband would just absolutely go crazy for this story because he is such a huge racing fan. Whenever there is Formula One on TV, that's all we're doing.
I hear that. That's how my husband and I are the same. I didn't know anything about racing until I met my husband. And then, it was Formula One for years and years and years and years. And
Mhm.
then I gave him his first a certificate like to go racing with BMW at one point for his first sort of learn how to race course. And
Mhm.
then it just went from there. And working with the Porsche guys, where it's just, they were so much fun. And it was such a family atmosphere. We had such a great time, not just him, but me as well. And it was just an amazing experience. And I thought, well, I need to put this in a book. And then Portia said, well, if you're going to write a book about it, we'll put it in our magazine. So it actually, the first chapter of Shifted is in one of their magazines. Um, and I also had to translate it into German because I wanted to make sure it reached all the audiences. And it was just such a fun book to write because I could, I would talk to all the um, coaches and talk to the mechanics and I learned so much and it was so much fun to put that down.
Oh yeah, and it
They,
is racing is big here in Germany because there is
oh,
a racing track
huge.
for Formula One that's in Karlsruhe that we've been to a couple of times. It's like just the amount of fans that cram in there that they are so hyped up for racing is amazing. I love it when you get into an atmosphere like that and everybody is just so excited.
Oh no, it's amazing. It just was an amazing experience, and we've been to the Nürburgring a few times, and just the whole racing atmosphere. It for us, it had just an amazing experience, and it was like a family. So we would see our family, like our European family, once a month for almost like 2 years. We'd fly over to Europe and do all these races and whatever, and it was so much fun. And I just thought it would be a shame not to use that knowledge, not to sort of highlight them too. So I gave them all a thank you and credit in the book. They were so amazing, and from the tire guy to the mechanics to the everybody, the engineers, I'd ask them questions and they'd answer everything, and it was just lovely. So it was great fun to write that book.
Well, and I can see how that could be so inspiring, how that could get you going with ideas.
Oh yeah, and you can actually ask them questions, and they all have their little stories and stuff
I would
about
bet.
things that they've done. And oh yeah, so it was just so much fun to try and incorporate some of the stuff and the camaraderie and the relationship and some of the sticky issues too. There's a lot of interesting things that go on at a racetrack. So it was a lot of fun.
And they're probably all reading it, trying to figure out which one of the bits of
Totally.
the story you got from them.
Oh, totally. And I sent them all signed copies, and everybody wants to know, oh, and they would like pick up characters and go, well, this is so and so, and I'd be like, it's really not. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and they enjoyed it. I think just as much as I did writing it, they enjoyed reading it and chatting about it and stuff. So it was fun.
What was your favorite series to write besides this one? What other one did you get really excited about?
Oh, I get excited about all of them, but honestly, I think my first series, the Callahan series, Break and Enter, Smash and Grab, Hit and Run, and it goes on from there, because it was new and it was an adventure. And
Hmm.
I think a lot of that comes through in the writing, because I tend to write they're romantic suspense, but they're more international in a sense. I've had a couple people describe my books and say there's two best ways to explain it. They say it's James Bond with less gadgets, or Jason Bourne with more sex.
I like that.
And me too. I was like, this is the best way to describe it. I love what you think. Um, so we do a lot of international and writing, and it was so fun that first series to put all that out there. And we did travel a lot. So I said a lot of my books in Italy, and because it's my favorite place.
Hmm.
And a lot of the actual settings were places that I had been, along with like I'd take pictures and then write about it. And the hotels that are written in those books were the hotels we stayed in and that type of thing. So for me, it's almost a love letter to all the travel and the adventure. So that series in particular kind of sits in my heart because it was a lot of fun to put all that out there.
So what's your favorite place in Italy?
That's hard. I mean, I love Florence,
Hmm.
but I also love Misano over on the coast. Such fun. And to me, it's almost the little towns, right? Versus
Yeah.
the cities. You get into these little towns and everybody's super friendly and they all just want to chat with you, and the food is phenomenal, and just that atmosphere is lovely. So we were spent a lot of time going from Florence and spent some time in Milan, but like Mazzano was really nice, and Mugello is really nice, and because I have to do it by racetracks, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, Monza also really nice, great, just a lot of fun. And the Italian people are so warm and friendly. So I really enjoy every time we go to Italy, we have a great time.
Yeah. It's like that's one of the places that we've been to a few times because my husband has friends who live there and we go visit his friends. And it's like I love every time we go to Italy. Everybody has always been so just warm and wonderful, and they don't seem to have a problem with my horrible Italian. They just appreciate that I try.
Exactly. Oh, I know my Italian's horrendous, but they laugh with you and it's all
Yeah.
fine. There's no, yeah, I've always thought that the Italians just seem so warm and
Yeah.
so welcoming.
So as long as I can order my coffee, it's all good.
Exactly. Exactly.
So what are you working on now?
Well, I have the third book in the vampire series that I'm working on. So the vampire series, I should tell you this. It's under AX Valentine is my pen name, and it's the first one is Depths of Hunger. The one I'm working on now, I just finished Depths of Obsession, and I'm working on another one, Depths of, and you're going to ask me, and I'm going to go, I can't remember. Depths of something, because I planned it out earlier, and now I don't remember. So I'm working on that. I'm finishing up actually a novella, and then I'm going to start on the next book in the Callahan series, which is for anybody who's read the Callahan series, this is going to be Kathleen's story. So those are my sort of three ups at the moment.
So are you a strict plotter? Because you seem rather organized. I would almost assume that you are.
Okay, I am a total pantser.
Seriously.
Seriously, I have no clue what I'm going to write until I sit down and write it. I'll think, okay, there's going to be a car chase. I think there might be, this type of criminal involved. I don't really know. And I'm going to have something to do with like a dog.
Wow.
And I start
The way that
writing.
you're talking about how you have your series planned out, it's like I would have figured that you planned out your books as well.
No, I love, I so want to be a plotter, but I don't have it in me. I tried and I actually plotted an entire book and I never wrote it because I knew what happened.
Hmm.
Once I know what happened, the hardest part of any book for me to write is that last 30 to 40 or 30 to 20 to 30,000 words because I know what's going to happen. Up until then, it's just as much a mystery to me who did it or who the bad guy is or how it all happened as it is to the reader, right? And then once I hit that point, the rest of the book I know what's going to happen. I'm like, oh, and I just want to write a paragraph at that point and go, oh, this is what happens.
Okay, so I have to ask you because I'm a pantser too. It's everything that I write is just like stream of consciousness. I sit down and I just start writing, and it's just
Exactly.
whatever
Yep.
pops in my head goes on the page.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's like I'm sitting there watching a movie and I'm just transcribing it.
Completely, completely. And people have said to me, oh, your books are so much like watching a movie. I'm going, that's exactly what it is. It's a
Yeah.
movie in my head. I sit down and I transcribe the movie. And it's almost like when a scene doesn't work, it's like you just rewind it all and you go
Yes.
back to that spot in the movie and you're going, where did this go wrong? Here. And then you keep going again. That's exactly what I do too.
Oh my God, I feel so understood in this moment.
Exactly. Because people ask, and I'm trying to explain to them, I don't know. It's just a movie that unspools in my head and I write it down.
And a
I
lot of
think
people
it's
are like, they don't understand how you can do that. And I'm like, I don't know how to explain it any other way. That's just what happens.
exactly. And I think it's a gift because, and I bet this happens for you too, when you're writing, you get so far through and then you go back to read it because you've like suddenly made a discovery in your writing. Some character walked on who did something totally unexpected or whatever. And then you think, well, now I have to go back and make sure all the precursor to that is there, right?
Yeah.
And you go back and it is.
Yeah.
Subconsciously, it's all there. And I think oh, this is
It's
like a
like the
gift.
characters in your head knew what they were doing, even if you didn't.
Exactly. Exactly. And I say that sometimes to people and I think they look at me like I'm really strange when they say it's the characters in my head and they talk to me and when the characters stop talking, I know there's a problem.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, it's weird, but I think it's a gift honestly because the people who sit there and plot it out sometimes, and I have good friends that do it, like 5 stickies per chapter, and they know exactly what they're
Yeah.
going to write about and all this. I think sometimes there's a lot of pressure in that.
Yeah, because you have to make it fit what you've just outlined. And that seems too
Exactly.
confining to me.
Exact. Oh, I feel so seen. Thank you. I, and this is exactly my problem. It's too confining and I can't deal with it. Like I
Yeah.
think, oh, I don't want to do that. On the corner of the screen of my computer, I actually have a sticky that says, and then aliens came down to remind myself that it's my world and I can do whatever I want.
I like that. That's nice. I have tried so many times to plot things. I have bought the Save the Cat book. I have bought a plotting program. I have tried every possible way to teach myself how to plot a story out, and I just can't do it.
I I'm right there with you. I have a bookshelf full of stuff like that, thinking I'm going to learn that this time. And oh, everybody says this is a great software to use. I can't. It's
Yeah.
just not how my brain functions.
Yeah.
So we
But
just have to do what works for us. I've
yeah.
decided this is the thing. You just have to, I roll with it. This is what works for me. It's the voices in my head, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. It's like you just have to accept it.
Exactly. Just keep going.
So now is a good time to do our 5 quick questions that never turn out to be quick, but one day I hold out hope it will happen. Are you ready?
I am.
So, question one, what is your favorite movie?
Oh, that's hard. Um, I go with Speed or Die Hard.
Oh, good one. Die Hard is our Christmas Eve movie every year.
We do it every year too. It's the whole family gets together and we all watch Die Hard. It's a whole thing. And then Speed, because back then it was like Keanu
Yeah.
Reeves. It was awesome.
So we actually have an advent calendar that is the Nakatomi building with Hans dropping every day. And when he hits the ground, it's Christmas.
That's awesome. Totally
And
awesome. Yeah, it's a great movie and it's totally a Christmas movie.
oh yeah, that's a hill I will die on.
Me too. Totally a Christmas music movie. They play the music in there.
Mm,
It's a whole you've got like a Grinch guy and he saves Christmas at the end. It's all good.
yeah. And I even made one of those little Christmas tree ornaments. You can find directions everywhere online of John in the little air duct. And there's a light in it so that the lighter kind of flickers.
Okay, I'm gonna have to do that next year. That is awesome.
Yeah, I love it. It's
Oh,
it's
very
it's a
cool.
whole thing in our house.
That's awesome. I know my daughter and I are super. My husband and my son, they're like, yeah, it's great. My daughter and I, we are total fans.
Oh yeah. Question two. What is your favorite movie snack?
Ooh, popcorn. Traditionalist, love me some popcorn.
Mine, my brother-in-law, I blame him for this. He got me hooked on it. M&Ms and hot popcorn. Because the
Oh,
candy shell stays hard, but the chocolate inside
mm.
melts. So when you pop some of that popcorn with the salt into your mouth with those M&Ms that have melted, it's amazing.
I'm gonna have to try this now. That
Oh yeah,
sounds incredible.
it is
Oh,
so good.
okay. I am totally doing that.
Question three. What is your favorite book to movie adaptation?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would go, okay, Silence of the Lambs. Anthony Hopkins was just amazing. And I thought they did a great job of bringing that. He was creepy enough because that book was so creepy.
Yeah.
And he did an excellent job of making that super creepy. I thought he
Yeah,
did a
he's good
great
at
job.
that.
And the other one I would say, and this is showing my age again, I would say The Vampire Lestat with Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt. Interview with
I
the
haven't
Vampire, I guess it was called, right?
Yeah. It's like, I haven't seen that in a long time. I saw it when it first came out, and I don't think I've seen it since then.
No, it's me either. It's been years, but I always remember thinking it was pretty close. They did a good job on making it pretty close to.
Yeah.
Now I know everybody always says Tom Cruise, no matter what he does, he's never that character if it's a book, right?
Yeah.
But I would say it was a pretty close adaptation. So that one in Silence of the Lambs, Anthony Hopkins just killed it.
Yeah. He was amazing. Question four. Since you moved from Nova Scotia to New Jersey, what was the hardest thing to get used to once you moved?
Oh, I lived in New York first, and I'll tell you, it took me a while to understand the accent. Believe it or not, you would think it wouldn't have been that hard. I got to tell you, I had people, I will never forget this. This young kid came into the library and asked me for a book on shocks. And I was like, shocks? Like, what part of, like, explain more. I want a book on shocks, shocks, shocks. I want a book on shocks. And I'm like, auto mechanic? Like, and he's looking at me like I'm a loon. And finally he goes, sharks, they swim. And I'm like, sharks, oh, sharks, okay. It just took me about 3 or 4 months to get all the accent down because it was so sharks. I'll never forget it. It took me a while. So I think that was probably one of the hardest things. That and the fact that people didn't talk the way we did at home. We talked to everybody in line. We talked constantly. And in New York, everyone stares at the sidewalk. So
Yeah.
it took me a while to adapt to that whole mentality and to get with the accent. It was funny. It was totally my fault. I should have realized, but it took me a while to tune my ear to what they were actually saying.
So question 5, who is your favorite author to read?
Oh, well, now I have so many. Um, that's a hard one. One favorite? I don't know. I think I'd have to say I love, so in the mystery sort of that type of realm, I love John Sanford. I love Patterson, his early stuff. We were talking about him earlier, and he's gone right in my head. Trunk music. Conley. I love Conley. If I'm doing romance, historicals, obviously Eloisa James, Jana McGregor. If I'm doing romantic suspense, I would say there's so many. It's really hard to just nail it down. Tony Anderson.
Who do you
There's
think
just
you've
so many.
read the most of their book catalog?
That's another good question. Who have I read the most? Oddly enough, I have read probably the vast majority of Janet Ivanovich
Oh, yeah.
because she is my palate cleanser.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't write humor. I just don't have it in me. Nothing I write is particularly funny. I've tried, it's not going to work. So I find that if I'm especially in a writing mode and then I'm going to switch like from book to book, sometimes I just need to read something to really cleanse my brain.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually read Janet Ivanovich, any of her series, and I, just go through and read. And I feel like I read mostly the most of her stuff just because it's great to just, it's not something I write. And I find that sort of cleanses everything. And you're probably the same. When you read something that you write close to or next to or in that genre, you're also pulling the book apart.
Yeah.
Right. And so I try and read things like Ivanovich because I'm not going to pull her book apart. I don't write that. Right. In the same way I don't write the humor and all that. So I find it's easier. Because once I start something that I really like, authors that I like Conley, I'll start mentally picking apart some of the stuff. And then I think, okay, now you're taking the fun out of the book, so stop doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard sometimes.
Whenever I need to do something like palette cleansing for the next book that I want to read, I actually go to nonfiction and I'll read like quantum physics or something like crime scene investigation and research books.
That's really cool. I've done some of that, and I do like the crime scene investigation. And I'm laughing because right next to me, I actually have the practical homicide investigation guide. Because
Nice.
everybody should have that as light reading, right?
I think if
But
anybody ever
yeah,
came into my house and looked at the books sitting around my office and next to the bed, they would turn around and leave very quickly.
oh yeah, oh I have all of that stuff too. And actually, you'll appreciate this. My husband for Christmas got me a lock pick set because I was talking about one of my characters has to pick a lock. So now I'm learning how to pick locks because it's
Oh,
just fascinating.
nice. I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah. So yeah, I think sometimes as a writer, and I would imagine actors must feel like this too. When you do it, sometimes it's hard to separate yourself from that thing when you're like reading the next thing. So I haven't really done a whole lot of nonfic, but that might be the way to go because it's so different and you don't have to, your brain doesn't click on and go, oh, well, they did this here and maybe I would have done it this way. Or my editor, mostly what I say is my editor never let me get away with that.
This has been absolutely fantastic, but we need to tell everybody again who you are and where they can find all of your books.
I am Lori Matthews. My books are all on Amazon, and I also have a lot of them translated into German. You can find me at lorimatthewsbooks.com, and I'm also on all the usuals under Lori Matthews Books. So you can find me on Facebook and X and Blue Sky, and I can't remember them all now.
I know. There's so many of them that are popping up anymore. It's like it's hard to keep track.
It's true. It's true.
Now, if somebody wanted the Vampire Mafia series, where can they find AX Ballantine?
axballantine.com, and you can also find those on Amazon.
And we're going to have links to everything in the description of today's podcast and on our website, so everybody will be able to find you very easily and go buy your books.
Well, thank you. This has been so fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
This has been fun. Thank you so much. So there you have it, folks. Our incredible first author, Lori Matthews. What a great way to start off our Lovefest for season 4. She was such a fun interview, and I can't wait to get to talk to her in the future when she has more books coming out, because I guarantee you I'm bringing this author back. Be sure to check out all of her books on her website at lorimatthewsbooks.com, and don't forget about her Mafia Vampire series. You can find all of that at axballantine.com. Don't miss out on these series. They're very good. You can find links to her main social media in the description of today's podcast or at burkhartbooks.com/podcast on our current episode information page. Now, in case some of you are wondering, our companion publication, Book Banter Magazine, is no longer being made. We had to do some hard number crunching in December to decide if we wanted to continue on with it in season 4. And unfortunately, it just was not financially viable. We were spending way too much money and time and not seeing a financial return on it. So Book Banter Magazine is no more. We are still looking at the possibility of doing one issue at the end of the season that includes all of the authors, just a year-end book buying guide so that you can find everyone we talk to. That one is still in tentative plans, but we'll see what happens in October. We'll make a final decision there, and we will be sure to let all of you know. But right now, I think we're going to go ahead and end this episode because, to be honest, I have been in bed sick for the last 4 days, and I kind of want to go back there. So I hope you all enjoyed this episode, and we have got so many more fantastic authors coming for you. Be sure to go to burkhartbooks.com/podcast and check out all of the authors that we have coming up in our 2-month Lovefest. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast streaming service or on our own YouTube channel, or you can even follow us at burkhartbooks.com/podcast. We try to make it very easy for you to find us. Because if you love books like we do, you do not want to miss a single episode of this podcast. So now you know what time it is, folks. It's time for you all to go forth and be happy and healthy.